pleasant good afternoon to each and everyone, and let me welcome members of the media. Of course, a special welcome to Channel 5, to the Office of the Minority Leader. This is our statutory monthly press briefing, and we propose to have these every third Thursday going forward until such time as the Assembly legislature term comes to an end. This afternoon, it brings me great joy. Today is a historic day for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, for those of us who are into sports and been following the World Championship happening in Tokyo, you would have witnessed today the historic accomplishments of both Keyshawn Walcott and Jereme Richards. Keyshawn Walcott was, of course, the champion in the javelin, winning gold for Trinidad and Tobago. And Jereme Richards placed a commendable second in the men's 400-meter sprint. And therefore, I, like the rest of the country, join in congratulating both Keyshawn and Jereme in bringing honor and glory to our country, Trinidad and Tobago, and putting us once again on the world stage. As you know, both athletes would have faced tremendous adversity in recent times, overcoming injuries, etc. And therefore, it's an inspiration to each and every one of us, especially our young people, about the power and the Trinbago spirit of determination, commitment, and discipline, to eventually, notwithstanding adversities, to achieve your goals. And again, on behalf of the Office of the Minority Leader, Tobagonians, and the country, we want to extend our heartiest congratulations. Members of the media, at this time, I will invite Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit to treat with the first issue at hand today, and then I will take you through three major issues I'd want to discuss as well. So I invite at this time Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit.
A pleasant good morning to members of the media, Tobagonians, Trinidad and Tobagonians, and wherever you are listening to us live on this press conference. Thank you for joining us, and we welcome you. So, as the Minority Leader indicated, today I will be addressing the issue of non-payment to interns of the YES program, summer internship program. So the last time I was here, we would have highlighted the issue of non-payment to suppliers and the absence of basic necessities in offices throughout the divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. Today we are here again to highlight a similar issue, and this issue deals with the students from the YES Youth Energized for Success Summer Internship Program. It was brought to our attention, and a parent reached out to the Office of the Minority with grave concern, indicating that their child was a part of this internship program, and up to this month of September, they did not receive the stipend that was due to them from the summer internship program. So this program has been a program that has been in existence for some time. So during the July-August vacation, students from universities participate in the program to gain meaningful experience, and of course, because they will be working and gaining experience, they will be paid a stipend for the work that they would have done. It is our information that that stipend should have been paid by the 3rd week of August, but we are now in the 3rd week of September, and that stipend has not yet been paid. The students, or a number of the students participating in this program, are university students attending schools and universities in Trinidad, in other Caribbean regions, as well as the United States of America. And the stipend received from programs such as YES is used to offset critical expenditure and costs associated with their attendance at university, whether it be payment of fees, payment of accommodation, but they rely heavily on the assistance or the stipend that is paid by YES. I remember while I was a student doing ACCA, going to school in Trinidad, I also came back, but at the time it was not YES, it was the clerical relief program in the divisions of the THA. And I also look forward, at that time, I look forward to the stipend received from that relief program during the July-August vacation to offset expenditure associated with studies. So I totally understand the plight of those students at this time, because they are away from home, they are away from their families, and they had an expectation that the funds that would have been received from the stipend will be used to offset critical expenditure. And to date, not being in receipt of those funds, I am sure it is creating great stress to these students outside of Trinidad and Tobago and away from home. And when they should be relying, or when they should be thinking about their studies, focusing on their schoolwork, they are now stressed by finding funds to offset critical expenditure. We are unaware as to the reasons why these stipends have not yet been paid, but we join with parents, we join with the students, and we are calling on this administration to prioritize the payments of the stipends to these students. We understand the stress that you are currently facing. It is clear that the priorities of this administration may not be where it is supposed to be. Because again, we came at the last press conference, we spoke to suppliers not being paid for months, some of them close to a year, providing services to the THA, and they remain unpaid. Now we are here to speak about the stress being faced by students going to universities in Trinidad and Tobago, outside of Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, as well as in the US, now not being paid their stipends. So again, Tobago House of Assembly, the Chief Secretary, the Secretary in the Division of Community Development, we are calling on you to immediately pay these students and prioritize payments to these students. At this time, I want to thank you for your attention, and I want to hand back the microphone to the minority leader, who will address other matters in relation to the management of the administration and the affairs of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Thank you, Councillor Benoit. And I just want to join with Councillor Benoit in calling on this administration to please prioritize the payment of our young Tobagonians, our students who are out there. They are the future of Tobago. And if you're treating our students like that, if you're treating Tobagonians who are going out there to improve their education and to come back to better this island, who else are you all going to treat like that? This administration, it seems as though Tobagonians are losing under the TPP. Because you know what is really heart-wrenching for me? Is that the majority of persons in this current administration, they were once college students as well. So they too should understand how difficult it is as a student coming from Tobago, having to be in Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, United States, studying. And when you come home, depending on this little stipend to help you meet your expenses out there, your rent, your purchase of textbooks, your ability to buy groceries. And in a situation like this, they have abandoned our students. They have left them and they have called me, spoke to me about the trauma that her daughter because she looked forward to this salary. Imagine they've worked months and you didn't even prioritize at least 1 month of that salary. And in the meantime, seeing THA spending millions on travel. Imagine the trip to New York, over $3 million they spent. But you have our students who came here and worked diligently. We had 2 interns here, and they came here religiously every day, and they did every task that was assigned to them. And they can't get paid, but you have THA secretaries and their friends jolly riding on public purse and public funds. Could this be right? Is this fair? Is this an administration that care and care about our young people? I tell you not. Fellow Tobagonians, you know, it brings me no joy to consistently come to you and having to labor on the maladministration, the incompetence, and the poor governance that is passing for administration on this island. I draw your attention to a press release that was circulated widely today coming out of the office of the Chief Secretary. And if that press release is not the height of disrespect for all of us as Tobagonians, I do not know what is. That press release, which announced the temporary assignment of the Secretary of Education to an additional portfolio of the Secretary of Tourism, at no point did they even circumstances has such a need arise. Because make no mistake about it, the issue, the law is clear. The Secretary has the unfettered responsibility to assign members of his executive as he so sees fit. So there's no question. That is not the issue today. The issue is just courtesy for us as Tobagonians to be transparent with us, because I am sure what is the circumstances, what is wrong with the Secretary of Tourism as to now require a temporary assignment of the Secretary of Education, Ms. Zorisha Hackett. Is the Secretary indisposed? Is she unwell? Has she abandoned the position? We are asking questions. None of us has the answer. And therefore, the chief secretary is obligated to give us the information. Because you see, in this current situation, it appears that they believe everyone, we as Tobagonians, we are fools and we are not worthy of being informed. What is it in this situation that you cannot come and just simply tell us what is the situation? Why is this assignment necessary? And you said it's temporary. For how long? You didn't even tell us whether it will be 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. We are clueless. And we are Tobagonians deserving of knowing what is going on. We are the ones paying the salary of the secretaries. And if a secretary is indisposed, she's a public officer and the public ought to have that information. Just like any public servant, if you are to take time off from work and you have to inform your employers, well, you Tobagonians, you are their employers, and it is your duty to know. They are duty bound to report to you. And do not feel unashamed to ask the questions, because these are important questions. Where is the secretary? Is she out of the country? Because I will tell you something, and I would share with you, this secretary has been an absent secretary in the Assembly Legislature for quite some time. As a matter of fact, the last time we have seen her featuring doing her public duty, which is to respond to questions, would have been sometime in March. And thereafter, we have not seen that secretary for her to answer important questions. As a matter of fact, I would share with you one incident in the House, in the Assembly Legislature. And I would ask the producer if he can play that clip, and I would explain to you what is the nature of that clip.
Leader of Assembly Business, you were to report on the status of Councillor Boris.
She is indisposed at the moment, Madam Presiding Officer.
Would she be attending today's sitting?
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer.
We will defer. Would she be attending within?
She said she sent an email to you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Clerk, did you receive any email? No?
Let's check.
Thank you, Leader of Assembly Business. We are going to defer question 2.
Presiding officer, the next sitting, we don't have the opportunity to ask questions. This will be that questions now on the order paper deferred.
What do you mean by the next
6.
question? The next sitting,
the next sitting we deal with the budget, and then we go into recess, and then we come back in September. This is unacceptable.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Questions until Secretary Boris. I would ask Leader of Assembly Business if you would hasten the footsteps of your colleague. But until she gets here, questions posed to Councillor Boris are deferred.
So, fellow Tobagonians, I want you to understand why, as minority leader, I am quite concerned about the absence of the Secretary of Tourism, because here is a perfect example of not one of our colleagues could have said in an assembly legislature where we are duty bound to attend, or if we are absent to provide an excuse, nobody knew where the secretary was. And this secretary has been absent, unavailable to answer important questions. We have questions on the order paper still waiting to be answered about the rhythm and blues or whatever festival they had. That question about Buju Banton, where they paid Buju Banton monies, and we are not sure if we got back those monies from Buju Banton. The secretary has been ducking, hiding, and running from answering these questions. And here it is again, the secretary on the eve of a sitting next week where she is duty-bound to answer these questions, goes amiss. And nobody could say, where is the secretary? And I'm asking the chief secretary today, on behalf of the rest of Tobago, what is happening with your Secretary of Tourism? And what will happen with those important questions to be answered next Thursday? Because I'm putting you on notice, Mr. Chief Secretary, we will not be accepting your temporary secretary coming to us and say she can answer those important questions. We have questions about accountability. What has been the spend on the previous carnival? How did you allocate the funding of those monies? Have you paid all the suppliers? Those are important, outstanding questions. And this secretary has been absent from the House since the last sitting in March. Imagine that sitting in May. The secretary deliberately, and I say that without apologies, ducked the questions and answers and came late. And at the time when the presiding officer asked about her whereabouts, not even the leader of assembly business knew where she was, to the point that when she provided an excuse saying that she sent a notification to the presiding officer, and when the presiding officer, as you saw, verified with her clerk, they had received none. And this is not the first time she has done that. You remember there was a time when she said she sent to the clerk a response to a question, and the clerk did not have that in his possession. So this Secretary of Tourism seems to be a runaway train, and perhaps the Chief Secretary perhaps doesn't even know where she is. And we are asking the Chief Secretary, what is going on with the Secretary of Tourism as to cause a temporary appointment? Because he has been precedent as well. You would recall Mr. Joel Sampson won his seat as Member of Parliament, and thereafter his seat as Assemblyman became vacant, and his position as Secretary as well. And for 2 long months, we went without having a permanent secretary in that position, and the Assistant Secretary, for the most part, notwithstanding the law does not empower him to act as the Secretary, fulfill those functions with the Chief Secretary being able to hold on. So there's precedent. So therefore, what is so dire in this situation that required a temporary appointment? And the most important question as well is how long? Why didn't the press conference give us these details? Doesn't the Chief Secretary believe that we as Tobagonians are worthy of this information? And I want to ask you, fellow Tobagonians, don't you believe that you ought to have that information? Because I'm fighting on behalf of you, asking them to let us be informed. But you too have to raise your voice. It cannot be the minority leader alone. You are having the conversations in your little corners, but we need to move the conversations beyond that. Because if we continue to stay silent in Tobago, what we are so disappointed in will continue. We'll have situations where our students who come and work honestly and earnestly, a month after the program has concluded, still cannot be paid. We'll have situations where you have secretary flying high and nigh all over the sky, spending millions upon millions. We are currently in the process, and soon enough I will come to you and I will name and shame the amount of millions each secretary would have racked up in overseas travel. We have already received some of the information because we did freedom of information request on these matters. And I can tell you already, couple divisions, as Justice Secretary and their personal staff, over this 4-year period, they have racked up millions in overseas travel. The second issue I want to treat with is this issue of the just commissioned Shirvan to Storby local connector, which I believe honestly is more a disconnector than a connector, and I'll explain to you why. This road, and it is not, let me back up. I want us to understand that we, and I say we as members of the PNM and at Tobagonian and as the minority leader, we welcome all development in Tobago. As a matter of fact, I have absolutely no issue with the project because this project was a national project to be undertaken by the government, so our road was always to be built. But of course, as the minority, I am firm in my belief that there was a better way, a cheaper way that would have given us an improved outcome. And I will take you back to the history of this road project that is now the Shirvan to Storby local road connector. This road project began, and the idea and the concept of this road project started somewhere back in 2019 when the government of Trinidad and Tobago undertook to construct the A&R Robinson International Airport. Of course, if you are building an airport where the estimated capacity is to move over 3 million people over time, it meant that naturally you will have to upgrade the road access to the airport. And therefore, the government, through a cabinet minute, undertook to have the construction of an A&R Robinson International Airport access road. At the time, the project was with NIPDEC. Eventually, by cabinet minute of number F19 of 313 dated October 31st, 2019, Package 6 of the construction of the A&R Robinson International Airport new terminal and associated works was reassigned from under the purview of NITCO, to the PURE Program of Upgrade and Road Efficiency Unit. And what is key in this matter, because you would hear from time to time our current administration saying to you that there was no evidence of collaboration in this road. So it was not simply that the central government was coming to Tobago and strong-arming Tobago and say, we will do this road. Because the THA Act is clear. Any matter that falls under Schedule 5, which is the responsibility of the THA, for the government to undertake any kind of action under those responsibilities of the THA, they must enter into a memorandum of understanding with the THA. And ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm that that memorandum of understanding was in fact implemented in 2020. So there was, just for clarity, there was a memorandum of understanding established between the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the Program for Upgrade Road Efficiency, the PURE unit, and the Tobago House of Assembly to collaboratively undertake the upgrade of the A&R International Access Road. What they also did in commissioning that project is that they also commissioned a feasibility. And that feasibility came up with 3 design concepts as to how they will approach this road project. So there was option 1, there was option 2, and there was option 3. And while I speak, I would ask the program, the producer, to pull up option 3 for the edification of our viewers so they can see exactly what we are referring to. Because, and I refer specifically to option 3, because after Pure did their feasibility and their analysis, the one that was considered the preferred option, and it was considered the preferred option based on the following. 1, that it provided the least impact on residents' homes, simply meaning it would have been they would not have been required to have a large amount of people being relocated or taking up their land. So this would have had minimal land access and land acquisition issues. So this was seen as a feasible approach. 2, it provides for minimal acquisition, as I said, and resident relocation. So it would not have disturbed the natural habitat of those living in that area in the main. There would be no negative impact on wetlands. So in terms of environmental concerns, that would have been minimized. It was also the most cost-effective route since it utilizes existing road reserve and roadways, meaning that the roads were already there. So it's just to upgrade the roads, and therefore it would have been an easier project to implement. It also allows for future development of the Friendship Estate because, of course, when you are planning, you are not just building and planning for today. You are building and planning for the future, beyond even 2040, but for the next generations of Tobagonians to come. And especially when you are expending large expenditure, you have to ensure that whatever you do has the longevity and the ingenuity to ensure that future development, it can sustain future development. And therefore, this road was designed with that in mind. It also allowed for the demarcation, separation of the wetland from development encroachment. So there was serious environmental concerns involved in this design as well. And I'll just list some key features of this road design. And this road was estimated to cost at the time $140 million. I want you to keep that in mind because we'll compare what this road was going to do for all of us in Tobago for $140 million spent, most importantly, by the central government. So this was not funds that had to come from the THA or the THA's allocation. The central government was building this road for the people of Tobago, independent of any THA allocation. So that is important. And what we were going to get from this road, this option 3, the scope of works for this road, right, included land acquisition and resident relocation, minimal, establishment of the new road right-of-way, 36 meters proposed, construction of 4 lanes roadway, meaning that on either side of the road, for the first time in Tobago, we would have had a dual carriageway, 2 lanes on the left and 2 lanes on the right. If you traverse Tobago at this time, nowhere in Tobago you will find a road that has the capacity to carry 2 lanes. However, this road was going to basically be revolutionary in terms of introducing to the Tobago space for the first time a dual carriageway. And this again was being done at the expense of the central government with no cost to you, Tobagonians. So your $140 million that is now jumping up could have been used for other things, including paying our hard-working students who were interns. This road would have also, interestingly, because if you look at this road currently, and you look at the electrification of the road, you are seeing lines running across the road, etc. This road would have had a construction of a utility corridor to accommodate all utilities. And what do I mean by utility corridor? It would have put all utilities, including cables for electricity, for internet, etc., would have gone underground, and therefore it would have allowed for easier installation, etc., and for future development in the space. This road would have also had construction of all and associated drainage. I want you to take a look at that road down there and look at the inferior drainage that is there. And because the road is located in Killigwin, where there's wetlands, it means that therefore, if in terms of the runoff, because there's wetland there, there's poor drainage. And because there's poor drainage, that area is susceptible to flood. And therefore, it was with that consideration, this project was designed to ensure you had adequate drainage to facilitate the poor drainage in that area. They were also going to have sidewalks. So for the persons who have to use that area, because it was going to be a boulevard for future development where you would have had restaurants, etc., as the Friendship Estate develops. This road would have had slope stabilization works. And they were also, most importantly, going to upgrade this Tobago local road beyond the apex. Because if you recognize the road that is currently constructed brings you only to the mouth of apex, and then you are restricted to the same bottleneck that has existed for time memorial. So therefore, we were getting for $140 million a far more superior road network that would have prepared us for future development and future traffic as well. And I want to play to you now how our Secretary of Infrastructure is playing smart with foolishness, because I will remind him of his own actions when it comes to this road, because he's now on record as trying to tell Tobagonians, well, the PNM was never serious about this project. Pure hogwash, pure lies. As I said to you, cabinet note done, funds allocated, feasibility commissioned, and they were in the process of going through the tendering for that road until this administration came in. And for some reason, because I don't know about you, but if I am saying I don't have a lot of money, and when I get my income when the month comes, and if my mother or my brother say that they will help me do something, why I would not be happy to accept them helping me to do that thing, and I keep the little bit of money I have so I can treat with the necessities for my family. I think that is common sense. But for some reason, this THA administration decided, no, we don't want all you to do that road, and we're not talking to you all. So you know what they did? They took from the feasibility study the option 1 concept, and they customized that option 1 concept, and out of the dead of the night, we learned of a road being cut. You all remember that? And the only reason we knew is because there was a gentleman who was residing on the estate, and his place was about to be bulldozed, and he took legal action. That is the history of this project. And then we all know that eventually they encroached on the ramparts. And what that tells us, Tobagonians, the fact that EMA had to intervene, is they started that road without any design. We were told that the road would cost $65 million. And I challenge them today to tell us what is the real cost of that road. because my information is that single carriageway roadway that we now have that is only taking you up to the mouth and the bottleneck at Apex is costing you almost the same amount, the $140 million that the government was going to spend to build that dual carriageway that I just described with all the superior features that it has. So here it is, you refuse a $140 million dual carriageway that was going to be funded by the central government at no cost to you, the THA, and you then go and build an inferior road with a number of faults and design impediments for the same $140 million. Is that prudent use of scarce resources? And more than that, with this project, Mr. James is on record as now trying to trump this single carriageway as the option and the preferred option. But when we asked him a question for written answers about this project, he provided an answer that said to us at the time, with respect to Shirvan Road, the first award was made to Namalco. However, they had to retender because of the withdrawal of the award contractor. It is currently being evaluated. So I want to share with you one of the persons who was invited to tender for that contract wrote to us as assembly members. Every assembly member, including the chief secretary, got this letter. And he was complaining about the process because he was invited, and listen to this, the same secretary who is now telling you about single carriageway. This contractor is saying that the tender he was invited for was a dual carriageway. So he said to us, the first inaccuracy, while far from egregious, needs to be made. That other invitees, name of which we are, is, well, first thing he was saying that the company, they had the wrong name. He said the second inaccuracy is to give the impression that the tender documents were obtained in a timely manner or were sincerely given. The company received one tender request 3 days before it was due to be completed and submitted. So a tender as complicated as this, where you have to do road design, etc., and have all kind of engineering studies and so forth, you are inviting contractors, but you are giving them 3 days notice to submit their bids. He's also saying that the company received an email. Hear this one. The company received an email from the procurement manager at DIQUD at 12:08 p.m. and on the 4th of October 2022, which said email had 4 attachments, and the said attachments appear to be a letter from DIQUD to prospective tenderers of 4th October 2022 entitled Request for Proposal, DIQUD 2022 RFP 007, construction of Shirvan Road, Storebay Local Bay Connector Road, and 3 ancillary documents. He said the company was being asked to submit a proposal for the design and construction of a 2.5 kilometer dual carriageway, 2 roundabouts, and a drainage system by 7th October. So here it is. The secretary is telling you that, well, the single carriageway was always the way we wanted to go. But in this tender document, what was actually requested was for the submission of tenders for the design of a dual carriageway, which is a 4-lane roadway. And since then, what is interesting as well, which the tenderer noted and raised concern for them, is that the email containing the invitation to tender and the request for proposal, which was received by the company on 4th October 2022, was also sent to the very said Secretary, Trevor James, Secretary of the IQUD. He said upon perusing the email, it was realized that Trevor James was directly involved in the tendering process. Ladies and gentlemen, if what this tenderer is saying is true, this is a clear breach of the procurement laws. And therefore, this matter, based on what the tenderer is saying here to me, will be reported to the Integrity Commission and the Office of the Procurement Regulator. Because here it is, and you're now getting to put the dots and connect the dots, because we are asking the question, why you all didn't want the central government to do this thing? But you are recognizing, based on what is being said here, is that the secretary is directly involved in who is going to be, or the whole tendering process. And perhaps I am asking out loud, is it that the THA wanted to control who got the contract? And was it that is what it was all about all this time? That if we spend the $140 million or so, we will get to choose who we want. Because the secretary is directly involved here, seeing all the persons who are tendering, etc. And this, again, as I said, is a clear breach of the procurement regulations. So, in conclusion, this road, as I stress, we are not against the road. What we are against is the wastage and corruption involved in the procurement of this road. When especially there was the opportunity and the alternative for us here in Tobago to get a superior roadway at no cost to the THA, allowing the THA to have additional funding available to treat with the day-to-day nuances of governance, including paying people on time, including developing the island in other ways, including treating with grants. And that is our fundamental issue with this road. And finally, I want to move to TRHA, because very recently you all would have seen another issue where I think it was reported that 2 brave police officers would have responded to an emergency call of a young Tobagonian who needed emergency response. And based on what was being reported, it appeared that there was no ambulance available, and it took our 2 courageous and very willing, heroic actions of those police officers who I wish to commend for their selflessness and for their service to ensure that a life was saved. And this is what I have been saying to Tobagonians all this while. You all may see politics because I'm a politician, but I see the lives of every Tobagonian in this issue of the ambulance, because today it was that youngster, but tomorrow it could be any one of us or our families, that when sickness comes, which we don't know when, how, or why, when you call for emergency medical attention, there might just not be any. And this is in the face of the THA spending over $18 million to procure 12 ambulances. And what is sad about that procurement process is after paying $1.4 million per ambulance, and you are seeing in St. Vincent, you are seeing Toyota highest ambulance being procured at a way cheaper cost and being utilized. And here in Tobago, where we would have brought in Ford ambulances before at a cost of $500,000, all of a sudden we don't know how to procure ambulances. All of a sudden, we are procuring ambulances 2 and 3 times its market cost. Because those ambulances, if you Google search the ambulances, they cost nothing more than 200,000 US at best. Sorry, 200,000 TT at best. That is about 40 something thousand US. But yet we are paying $1.4 million. That is 7 times the cost. Who is getting that money? Who is benefiting from that? And if we as Tobagonians don't want to recognize we are being robbed blindly, and we want to remain quiet because of political loyalty, then I rest my case. But that matter has been reported. That matter has had very important witness statement. But curiously, post April 28th, I have been unable to get an update on that matter. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if the officer is still assigned to that matter. So pre-April 28th, I got confirmation that a major witness who was involved in the process was interviewed and gave some very important information. Post-April 28th, I cannot get a word on that issue of the ambulance. All I'm getting is crickets. And while we have the ambulance going on, you have a next situation where the TRHA spent indicated that they have started the process to acquire the Palms villas for over $2.5 million. And you know what is really concerning about that arrangement? And when I say 2.5 million US, so that is about 20 million TT. And this is a TRHA that cannot, if your head hot in you and you go there for some barely get Panadol. I am being told that the vote has been clean. Hospitals cannot purchase important medical equipment, life-saving equipment. But in the face of that, they have prioritized giving to someone and purchasing lands and a property that nobody else wanted. That property stood on the market for over 15 years and nobody purchased. And you know what is interesting about that purchase? We filed an FOI, and when we asked them, do you have executive system of information? They do not have any executive council minutes or note approving that project. Quote for you exactly what was asked and what was responded to. And it is shocking. So we requested the minutes from the Executive Council meeting or any meeting held approving the purchase, lease, or rental of that project. The response signed by the CEO, Mr. Delmon Baker, is that please be advised that the authority has no document or documents to satisfy this request. So in layman terms, as I interpret it, is that they have no executive council authority within their possession that approves this purchase. That is one. We ask them for any document outlining the proposal to purchase, lease, or rent. In this instance, they said the request will be upheld and the authority will provide the documents. This response was on the 17th of March, 2025. We are now in September. This is what? Oh, somebody doesn't want me to talk to you all. This is almost 17. Sorry. So this is the 17th. facts are stubborn things, and perhaps somebody doesn't want you all to hear the truth. But we will bring the truth to you with documents, documented evidence. When I speak to you, I speak from a position of information. I do not come here to slander or misrepresent anyone. I come here with facts, and I report the facts as they appear to be. And therefore, the second question and response was that they would provide the information on the proposal. Up to this point, we are 4 to 5 months later, and we have not received that information. So clearly the TRHA does not want to be transparent with us, and in extension, you, the people of Tobago. And most importantly, and interestingly, we asked for copies of the following: the sale or lease or rental agreement, because if you're going to purchase any property, there must be an initial sales agreement that would outline the terms upon which this purchase is being done. And significantly, we asked for the valuation report, because if you are buying something of that nature, you must have some expert professional valuation of that thing to ensure that whatever the value they are calling for it, it is actually you're getting value for money, and it is of the market value. They are saying to us that they do not have that information. So what it means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the TRHA embarked on a purchase for a property to which they did not even think to do a valuation. So even at $20 million, there's no evidence to confirm whether that property actually at its current state is valued $20 million. So one, you already have the misprioritization of scarce resources, but on top of that, you also have the lack of prudence in ensuring corporate financial responsibility in protecting the public state funds. Because how could you go about a purchase of public funds where you have not even done a valuation report? And of course, we ask for an outline list of all payments. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, on these three matters, you have the TRHA like a runaway train, doing what they want, spending their money how they want, buying what they want. So you have the example of the ambulances, where online you are seeing it for $200,000, yet they have spent $1.4 million for one of the same ambulance. You have the issue now of this purchase of the Palms Villas, which they have purchased for $20 million. But in essence, it could very well be worth 10. We don't know, because they just did not do the necessary evaluation and valuation of the property before they purchase. So for all you know, that property may very well worth less than $20 million. And again, if that is so, who would have benefited? And perhaps you would understand why they chose to purchase property to expand oncology and other services when the Signal Hill Hospital have a lot of unutilized lands right there that can be used to build new facilities. So you bypass the land that is available. Perhaps to develop that land, you would have spent half or even quarter of what you're spending for this Palms Villa. And on top of that, you still have to go and retrofit the villas for it to be suitable. So you have to spend additional monies. And this is in the context where this administration keeps saying they don't have any money. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tobagonians all, this isn't a pleasing thing for me to have to always labor about how Tobago is being mismanaged at this time. Because I've always said, whereas we can always get more, and you hear the Chief Secretary laboring about looking forward to more, that is always welcome. But the question we all must focus on at this time is, how are we managing what we have at this time? Because I'll tell you, as a parent, if you can't manage your small salary, I am sure anybody would know, even if you get a pay increase, you will mismanage that too. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to reiterate, Ms. Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit raised the issue of our student interns who are yet to be paid. The financial year is closing September 30th, and we are calling on this administration to pay the picnic them. Pay the picnic them their money. 2, we have the issue of Ms. Boris. Without any explanation, Ms. Hackett has been temporarily assigned to the position of Secretary of Tourism, and we are calling on the Chief Secretary to come clean with Tobagonians and tell us what is happening. What is the reason why you had to take the decision to reassign Ms. Zarisha Hackett the additional portfolio of Secretary of Tourism for a temporary period, and for how long? We want to know. Thirdly, we raised the issue of the road. The issue is not that the project is not a necessary project. It is necessary, especially in the context of the new international airport. But what we continue to say to you, Tobagonians, I'm sure if you take away your political bias, you would recognize it makes proper sense, is that there was a better alternative at no cost to the THE. And finally, we have the issue of mismanagement at the TRHA, where they continue to misuse and abuse public funds. And they are misusing and abusing public funds in the context of the items they are procuring. When you do the analysis and you do the assessment, what they are paying is way overpriced and inflated. And the example is there of the ambulance, where we have paid $1.4 million per ambulance for vehicles that so far has seemed to be unfit for use. Because even after commission since March, I don't know how many Tobagonians who required emergency attendance would have received that service from that ambulance. The last time we saw those ambulances were when one was being taken on a stretcher, and I'll say a stretcher, a tow truck, and they told us, well, it's just routine servicing. But since that time, we have not seen the ambulances in operation, and we are being told that the TRHA currently only have one ambulance in its fleet that is operable. And they had to even go back, because I'm sure you'll recognize the universal ambulances that we were leasing that they had sent back and discontinued. Those are back on the island again. So it is not only that we have spent $18 million on useless ambulances that are overpriced, but we continue to spend additional funds to lease ambulance services in the absence of having the ambulances in operation. And we have also the issue of the PAMs, where we have been told the TRHA spent $20 million to purchase this place. They now have to go and spend additional money to fix it up. And even while that is happening, the place remains unutilized. I passed there yesterday and no work is happening there. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, as I close, I would invite, if you want any clarity on anything raised or any other matter of national import that you believe you would want questioned or a response to, This is your time, members of the media, where you are free to ask your questions, if any, at this time. Yes.
How long can a secretary hold on temporarily for another secretary? What's the stipulated period?
So the THA Act is quite silent, except that it provides for how you treat with the continued absence of a member. So once a member with cause continue to provide to the presiding officer justified reasons for the absence, then the assignment continues until such time. You will recall we had in the past with Assemblyman Sandy when he was ill, and he continued there up to the dissolution of the term, and therefore others would have, well, it wasn't a temporary assignment, but of course, you know, persons were able to hold that position since he was ill at the time. So there's to answer the question conclusively, there is no stipulated time except that if there is a leave or the presiding officer then declares that this position is now vacant in the case of a member, and if the chief secretary advises in the case of a councillor, the president, that the councillor no longer holds that position, then he then has the opportunity to replace that councillor in this situation. But there's nothing that explicitly says a period of time. You're welcome. Sure.
The inflation rate has been declared to have been decreased from 1.5% to 1.4%. And as we're coming to the end of the financial year, and the prices have decreased very slightly on food and non-alcoholic beverage sectors, we still see an increase in prices for things like actual potatoes and so on. How is the THA, how do you think the THA could perhaps support Tobago households in meeting these price increases and increases they're very minimal in terms of supporting their children at school, keeping their cupboards filled? How do you think the THA can support Tobago households?
Thank you for that question. And you know, I did a bit of economics, and you know, oftentimes we hear the inflation rate has decreased, and it's really about the rate of inflation. So it's not that prices are not increasing, but at the rate of increase is a little slower than before. Because if you, I'm sure all of us go to the grocery, and we recognize almost every month when you go to the grocery, what you paid for an item the month before is completely different, and in most times it is a little bit more expensive, as you rightfully said. And therefore I have been advocating, because I have residents, a lot of them come to me for basic grocery support on a monthly basis, and I have advocated both at the level of the back to school, where I said it is time we cut out the wastage, cut out some of those overseas travel, which is now $25 million, by the way. If we take $10 million of that, if we as a policy say we are absolutely going to travel only for those things that are absolutely important for Tobago's improvement and development, and we are going to funnel those monies, we are going to reprioritize those monies and rechannel those monies to areas for social assistance, like back to school, universal back to school assistance, where at least every household with a student gets a grant. And it goes for our families as well, especially our single mothers. We need to implement a grant to support single mothers, especially, well, single parents. And of course, we have to bolster the grant funding for the social support, which we used to call the food card. We need to make these things a priority. In the days, I remember during COVID and the PNM was, you would have heard a lot of noise. But the PNM did not discriminate against Tobagonians during COVID because we understood how tough things were at that time. And people you may believe are well-to-do were also struggling. So you couldn't just go with the traditional baseline of if you're getting below 5,000. There are people with different commitments, and when you check your disposable income, you really basically living either below the poverty line or just about. And therefore, some of the things that this THA is doing in terms of waste, imagine $18 million spent on ambulances when we could have gotten ambulances at half that cost. That means that if we were prudent and saved $9 million, that $9 million could have then been redistributed to support families, because families are finding it difficult. Sometimes I ask myself, you know, I have a small family and I still find it very expensive when you go to the grocery. What you would have gotten a basket of grocery before basically is a handful. And I wonder sometimes if me with my small family is finding it so difficult, imagine persons with lesser income and more children. And therefore, as an assembly, I've asked them time and time again, let us sit, let us talk about how we can improve the social condition of Tobagonians. When you look at homes, that is another area that we need to treat with. No Tobagonian should be living in 1980s conditions, and I'm speaking to outhouses. We should have, by now, eradicated all outhouses in Tobago. And no home in Tobago should have leaking roofs, especially when we're coming in and we are in the hurricane season. These are the things that should be the priority. But under this administration, they were ignored. This administration was the administration that pretended to care. You remember they used to go around and pretend like they could fix roof. How many roofs have they fixed since then? They used to walk around with bread. How many hampers have they given since then? They talked about bread and butter, but as soon as they start eating with knife and fork and enjoying first-class airfare and rides, they have forgotten the Tobagonian. And this hurts me a lot, watching it from the other side.
One final question.
Sure.
The external model deal that has been recently signed, are you aware of any plans for a rollout of funds to be allocated to Tobago from that?
Well, I am not quite aware. As a matter of fact, you know, it's quite interesting that before April 28th, the Chief Secretary and even Mr. James had a lot to say about energy resources in Tobago waters. And you would remember part of the rejection of autonomy was that we needed to basically delineate what is Tobago waters, because there's a belief that a lot of the energy resources are within those boundaries that you may believe is more Tobago than Trinidad. And therefore, it is quite curious that since or post April 28th, the Chief Secretary has gone soft on these issues because, as you rightfully point out, any kind of survey that would happen will affect our fishermen. And therefore, what is the compensation to the fishers? Have you heard the Chief Secretary speak on behalf of the fishers? We have had the situation that is happening, and we understand the geopolitics. We are a small island among big fishes. And therefore, you have your fishers saying that we are afraid to go out and fish because we are seeing boats being bombed, and we don't know if one of these days we might just be next. We don't know. And they are afraid to go out. And rather than the Chief Secretary raise his voice on behalf of the fishers, because he now has his friends in Trinidad and they are speaking a certain kind of language, he has now gone quiet, and he has now not just quiet, but he has gone soft. Where is the energy that you had for your own Tobagonian? And you know, in Tobago they say, is we does do we own? Because you had a lot of mouth for a Tobagonian-born prime minister. But now you have a prime minister from the other side, and you have absolutely nothing to say on behalf of Tobago. You have no representation again to make on behalf of the fishers. You have no representation to claim what you were. They have a big billboard. If you go to Rockleyvale Junction, showing you trillions of oil. All that conversation has stopped since April 28, and I wonder why. You're welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's been a long presser, but it's been a while we have spoken like this, and I propose that we will do this until such time as the Assembly Legislature dissolves. The reality is we are in an election season, and you're seeing some actions that would clearly alert you that, this administration realizes that their time is about up, and therefore all of a sudden they are getting busy trying to fix as much as they can after they would have abandoned you and abandoned so many projects. There's one up at the Blue Food, which was started in 2023. All of a sudden, they're selling it as some new project. But that project has been delayed for 2 years. 2 Blue Food would have gone. And after Chief Secretary promised the people of Bloody Bay that they would have that facility in 2024, it was not delivered. Now you see them speeding. So you understand the season we're in. And all I'm saying to you, Tobagonians, is be alert, be aware, and stand up for your rights. Thank you.